We leave you with some global market opinion. Earlier in the show, we caught up with Laurence Balanco of CLSA, who says that there is a greater downside risk from a medium-term viewpoint. Listen in.
Unfortunately, we've seen this pretty broad trading range for the Nifty year to date, roughly 15% wide. So we've really traded between 16,000 and 18,000 year to date. And the rally that we've seen off the June lows is now taking us into that resistance zone, which is basically the highs that you made back in March and the highs that you made in January. And in conjunction with that resistance area, we have some of our shorter term indicators flashing buying exhaustion, so that comes from our DMARC indicators. So we do think there's a downside risk for a correction within that range that you've seen year to date. We need to be aware that the upside risk isn't attractive here. And even if we just take it to the midpoint of the range, we have greater downside risk being capped at the 18,300 area. And our view for US markets is that we do think we retest the June lows, which does leave the Nifty vulnerable to fall back to that 16,000 area, which is where we've seen the lows develop in June as well as back in March. So there's definitely a risk of falling back to retest the lows. We think that is a likely event basically going forward. And the best case scenario is actually to find support at the midpoint of this range where the 200-day moving average sits, and that's roughly at the 16,800 area. Base case is that we have a 5 to 8% correction, which puts us roughly back in the middle part of the range.